Welcome back, you guys. Today is a special video because, well, bad news, this is the final GhoulRWM with me of the spooky season. I know, I can't believe October's over already. Where did the month go? Where did it go? But the good news is today actually marks my 2-year anniversary on YouTube. So thank you guys so much for joining this journey, and here's to another year, I guess. I ain't going nowhere. All right, so like always, everything that I use I will have listed down below, and as you can see, I kind of got a head start on the most time-consuming part of this, because literally this took me like an hour and a half. Okay, so yeah, I got a head start. Don't blame me, okay? With that said, let's get spooky. Marianne was an avid hiker. She went out all the time, knew all the local routes and all of that. And then sadly she had to move. So once she got to her new area, she scoped out all the trails and, you know, decided it'd be a good time to go and explore some new territory, you know? So she packed up all her hiking gear and she went out. Unfortunately, that's when the accident happened. She doesn't remember much about the accident. She just knows that she woke up in the hospital. She had huge bandages across her chest, and she was told that she'd been attacked by some kind of animal. They assumed, you know, some kind of bear or mountain lion. She didn't remember seeing any bears or mountain lions out there, though. Not one footprint. So she thought that was a little odd. Usually if there's, you know, some kind of wildlife in the area, you see signs, you know. But she decided, you know, I don't know the area, I'm new. Not gonna argue this. So she got out of the hospital and, you know, she wanted to get back into hiking again, but she was a little scared, you know, like something about the idea of going out in the woods just freaked her out, and she couldn't understand why, because she loved going out in the woods. She'd always been an outdoorsy kind of gal. But one of her new coworkers suggested that maybe she had some PTSD or something and she should go to a psychiatrist. And she thought that was a good idea, so she went ahead and she booked an appointment. And once she got in there and met with the doctor, you know, they started asking her all these questions of like, well, do you remember what happened? Do you remember seeing the animal? And she's like, no. And they're like, do you think maybe you just blocked it from your memory? And that's where all this, you know, PTSD is coming from, is you're just too scared to get it out of your system. So he started putting her into, you know, hypnosis, trying to make her feel relaxed and like it was okay to, you know, remember those things, to explore her memory of that night. Well, next thing she knew, she woke up on his couch and her throat just felt raw, and her shoulder where it attacked her ached. And the doctor had this really weird look on his face. And she's like, what? What happened? And he said, you just kept screaming, it's eyes, it's eyes. Well, that kind of unnerved her a little bit. I mean, what was that supposed to mean? It's eyes. And he's like, what do you remember about the animal's eyes? Well, she didn't remember anything about the animal's eyes. She couldn't remember a thing. She had no idea what was going on. Well, the therapist, felt like she had some serious issues that she was, hiding, and set her up with like weekly appointments. Because obviously she's got a lot of things that she's dealing with, right? So she started going weekly, and every single time he would try and do the hypnosis with her. And every single time it would end with her screaming. And it was kind of getting to the point where she was not functioning very well. So we ended up prescribing her some heavy-duty drugs and told her to take time off of work. He's like, you need to just stay home. You're a danger to yourself right now. You're a danger to others. Well, staying home was like the last thing she wanted to do. She needed answers. She needed to know why this was affecting her so horribly. So she thought it'd be a good idea to make herself go back to the path that she started out on. Maybe something would jar her memory. Something. Well, she got there, and she didn't feel herself freaking out, so she thought, okay, I'll just go down the path just a little ways. I'll stay right on the path. I'll know exactly where I am. Let's just see, what exactly is going on here. See if anything else, jogs my memory. So she goes down the path, and she sees a tree with like huge claw marks about 7 feet high on the tree. Well, instantly, she had this flash in her mind of glowing green eyes towering over her. And she started having an anxiety attack. Somehow she made her way back to her car, and she called her therapist, and he talked her down, and she got the heck out of there. But she vividly remembered those eyes, and she thought, well, that must be what I'm screaming about in therapy, those eyes. But what kind of animal is 7 foot tall with glowing green eyes? It's not a mountain lion. That's not a bear. So she went back to her therapist, and she told him what she did. And he wasn't very pleased with her. I mean, can't say I blame him. It was kind of dumb. But she needed answers. He told her to just go home, relax, don't go into the woods, and just, try journaling her thoughts about that night, what she feels when she goes hiking, all of it. So she did. She went home, she broke out an old journal that she had. She started writing down what she could remember. But it just coming back to those eyes. Well, she couldn't stop thinking about it, even when she made dinner. She was still thinking about what this could possibly mean. And while she was pondering it, she happened to realize, instead of crumbling up the hamburger to make a hamburger, she'd absentmindedly started eating the meat raw. And the thing was, she kind of liked the taste. Even when she realized she was doing it, she didn't really want to stop. Well, that can't be normal. That's not healthy, for one thing. But she'd already ate like a quarter of the package. So she figured, okay, well, if I get sick, I get sick. And kept eating. It's like she couldn't stop herself. She was just compelled to do it. When she got to her next therapy session, she was determined by then that she was not going to tell what had happened. I mean, what was she gonna say, you know? How do you explain that you were eating raw hamburger meat to your psychiatrist? Like, there's not really a good way of explaining that one away, you know? So she was like, I'm not gonna say anything. I'm not gonna tell him. The fact that she didn't get sick, well, that was odd. She should have gotten sick. Anyone would have gotten sick. Human stomachs aren't made for that kind of thing. But there she was, chowing down on some ground up hamburger, raw. And since she didn't get sick, whenever the mood struck her, she found herself craving it. Like, she tried eating just mostly meat, but that wasn't enough. She needed that raw meat. Something about the taste of the blood just really, she needed it. She couldn't figure out why, but she needed it. And again, she didn't want anyone to know that this was going on, so she tried and keep it hush hush. And then she started to notice other things. Stranger things. Like, she could hear things that other people weren't hearing. One day she came into work and she smelled something awful and it was driving her nuts. Until she finally found out that someone had expired eggplant parm in the company refrigerator. And that's what she'd been smelling. And everyone thought it was so odd that somehow she was smelling that. Like, how did she smell that? Her cubicle was nowhere near the break room. But she couldn't help it, and she couldn't figure out why it was happening. Well, one day she went home, and she couldn't explain why, but she just felt weird, like something was up. And she didn't know what, but she just knew something was up and something bad was going to happen that day. When she got home, She kicked her feet up like she normally would and started getting ready to go to bed. And while she was getting ready, she happened to stand in front of the window. She couldn't explain it, but when the moonlight hit her skin, it was like she could feel electricity pulsing through her veins, like nothing she'd ever felt before. And again, she didn't really understand what was going on, but something about the moonlight just had her hair standing on end. Something about it just felt unnatural. Well, next thing she knew, she felt like her stomach was just tying itself in a knot. Her back started hurting. She didn't know what was going on. It was like all of the bones in her body were breaking all at once. It was a pain that she had just never experienced in her life. It was excruciating. But for some reason, she kind of found it a little thrilling as well. Then she could hear a crunching sound. She didn't know what it was, but it sounded awful. Then she looked in a mirror and realized it was her bones. Her bones were breaking. Something was going on with her back. It was changing. It was growing. It was wrong. It was so wrong. But something about it felt kind of right, too. She kept waiting for the pain to be over, but it just kept coming in waves. Every wave brought some new torture to her body. Till finally, the pain stopped. She tried to look in the mirror, but all she could see was a furry chest of some kind of animal. She couldn't see herself. It was the strangest thing. So she stooped down to get a better look, and that's when she realized she was the creature. Well, it felt wrong, but something about it also kind of felt right. Next thing she knew, she tried to yell, but all that came out was this god-awful howl. Like nothing she'd ever heard before. And it took her a while to realize that that sound was coming out of her. She started pacing. I mean, what was she gonna do? She can't be this creature. She never believed in werewolves, but that must be what happened. That must be what she is. But who was going to believe her? So she tried to calm herself down, thinking, okay, you know, every story you've ever heard about werewolves, they're only like this until the sun comes up. So when the sun comes up, I'll be totally fine. It's fine. This will be okay. I can do this. I just have to wait till the sun comes up. So she waited, and eventually she fell asleep. When she woke up, she was her again. Well, she called her therapist, thinking, you know, if anyone could help her, anyone could understand what was going on here, it'd have to be him, right? I mean, it sounds crazy, but if anyone knows something that sounds crazy versus someone who actually is crazy, it's gonna be a therapist, right? So she called him, let him know what had happened. And he said, okay, how are you feeling? And she said, oh, I'm good. I'm good. I just, I'm freaking out a little bit. And he's like, okay, I'm going to send someone to come pick you up. Okay, don't worry. We're going to handle this. So she waited, and eventually someone came, knocked on the door. And before she could invite them in, they slapped her in a straitjacket and started hauling her out to a van that said, Sherwood Asylum. Well, she immediately began protesting. I mean, they couldn't lock her up. She was going to tear someone apart in there. There's no way. But they weren't listening to her. They carted her away. And that next month, she started feeling the same as she did that first month. Her bones started feeling weird. The moon felt electric. She started screaming at them, you've got to get me out of here. You've got to get me away from everyone. And of course, they knew it was a full moon. And they had taken to calling her Wolfie. And they thought it was really funny that she really thought she was going to transform into a wolf. You know, they'd start howling at her. And they refused to help her. And as she could feel her body breaking, she looked at the one that was laughing the loudest and she said, you, I'm going to rip your throat out first. Well, the next day, they got a weird call over 911 dispatch. There had been some kind of animal attack at the asylum. Now, how an animal got into the asylum, no one could figure out, but the damage it did. Here's our final GhoulRWM look, you guys. Thanks for joining me this season. It was super, super fun, and who knows what I'm going to get up to next year. Who knows? I hope you guys enjoyed this, and again, thank you guys so much for sticking with me for 2 full years now. Oh my gosh. I mean, I know not all of you have been here for 2 full years, but like, those of you who started out with me and are still with me, I appreciate you so much. And the rest of you, I also appreciate you so much too, okay? Thank you guys so much for yet another spectacular GhoulRWM season. And I will see you next year. I mean, the rest of you I'll see you next week. I don't know why I said next year. Okay. I'm tired. It's time to take all this off. I love you guys, and see you next week.